Welcome into Hoops Forum, a production of Radius Athletics and a quick timeout podcast. I'm Tony Miller, and my co-host Randy Sherman will join us here in just a minute. Before we get going, thanks to our sponsors over at 323 Sports. If you're thinking about new basketball uniforms for your program, let me encourage you to take a look at 323 Sports Good Game Line. Right now, they have a special home and away uniforms. That's both jerseys and shorts with a shooting shirt for just $145. It's an incredible deal. To find out more about what they can do for your program, visit 323 Sports, or you can contact a sales rep at sales@323 Sports. They'll be sure to do it right for your basketball program. This week is kind of a continuation of what we talked about last week. If you haven't gone back and watched that or listened to that episode, I encourage you to do that. We talked about 4 ideas for simplifying the game for our players. You can find that linked down in the description of this episode. But Randy, we won't go through all 4 of those suggestions again,
Yeah.
but why don't you go ahead and talk through that first one, because that's where we're going to spend most of our time today.
Yeah, I think the first one that I made, or that I offered, was to sort of like to simplify the game for our players. As coaches, we need to clearly define sort of exemplary or standards for each phase of play, and that way our players know exactly, sort of like what their objective is at any moment in the game, what and be able to measure that, if you will, over against an exemplary model. And today, what we're going to talk about is a tool that I've been working on off and on for a little while, um, to provide that for our players.
I kind of equated it last week to those of you that are familiar from like a business perspective or a marketing perspective. When you have clearly defined objectives, it becomes very clear for everyone involved, like what we're actually trying to accomplish. When you stay with big picture like goals, you may hit them, you may not.
Hmm.
It may improve your performance, it may not. But the more specific that you get, when you have something that's measurable, that we can go back and say, did we actually achieve this? Something that's realistic for your program too, I
Hmm.
think is an important part of a well-written objective. And even like a time element to it. Like, when do we want to? I deal with this a lot. We have these conversations a lot within our own staff. Like, when do we want to be not necessarily like good at, like we want to have accomplished it, but like where are some check marks through the season
Yeah.
or in a game? What do we want to be looking like at this part of the year? And so, um, I think this is a fantastic exercise. I'm excited to talk a little bit about it.
Okay.
Um, you wanna we'll pull it up here on the screen, and then why don't you just kind of go through it at your pace?
Okay. Yeah. So what I did was create a checklist where in in each of the 4 phases of the game, and you could start this at any point in the game cycle. I just happened to start at transition offense. Um, I wanted to come up with like 5. You could, someone else who wanted to do this, you could have 4 or 5, whatever, 5 sort of high level bullet points for each of the 4 phases. That would bring the total to 20, right? So in of like teaching points, that we want to emphasize, um, qualities we want exhibited. So just think of, I kind of like make this analogous to if we're talking about before we've taught these things to a group of players, almost like my to-do list. Like in transition offense, I need to teach who is going to be the inbounder, outward, if we're talking about at transitioning after an opponent made field goal. Who's going to receive the outlet, and how do I want the 3 players not in that transaction to run and move, and where to. Um, so it's almost like can serve as a teaching to-do list. Like I need to, we want to install our transition offensive system. Here's 5 big things that I can't miss, or I've got to include, and do that for each of the 4 phases. Um, if you've already presented this material to your team, maybe seasons ago, it's then becomes sort of like an evaluative tool, meaning you could use it to grade film, to guide a film session with your team, to sort of like show your team, or in your own personal, alone time film study that you do late at night or on your laptop on the bus or something like that. You're watching for what are we watching for? What are we even looking for? um, we're looking for our teaching, what we did on the front end, to match our performance after it's been installed and implemented. So yeah, quickly, that's what it's for.
I think again, the more you can simplify it and kind of put things in compartments, and the easiest compartment for us as basketball coaches are obviously the four phases of the game. Um, why don't you? What would you say for the coach who's looking at this and may not have everything that you have, or may not even value what all of the things that you value?
Well, I would hope that not everyone, I mean, I know from watching basketball that not everyone uh, installs or emphasizes or has the same high points that they're driving home to their team. So I would say to that coach, just sort of like draw inspiration from the idea of taking those four phases and add your own 5 bullet points. Like if you know customize it to fit what your needs are. So yeah, that's what I would say, is just sort of use it as a guide. Like, oh, I like that idea, but I'm not. We don't play defense that way, or this is something that I emphasize that Randy didn't put on his list. That's great. Like, just just sort of take the idea and run with it.
I would have guessed that a word of caution: don't end up with like 10 to 12 things under each of these.
I think so. I think that, for example, let's look at the transition offense. We'll start there and say those 5 things. When I did this, I kind of had to do that. I had to, like, oh man, what's gonna not go in there? Like, what's not gonna make the cut, if you will. So what we so I decided to include things like, when if say I've put this in, I've installed all this, I've presented this material to my team, and now we're playing and I'm grading film, or evaluating our performance. I'm looking for, did the right player inbound it? Whatever teaching method you use for that, did that happen? Did our outlet get the ball high enough and wide enough? Did we get the ball ahead quickly as I'd like? Like those kind of things. And as we move to offense, did we show up in our alignment? Be that 4 out, 5 out, whatever your desired alignment might be. Um, did this possession, did we get a paint touch? That's a simple, like, I can just check the box, like, yes, we did. Did we get multiple sides? Sometimes maybe you do, sometimes maybe you don't. Check it if you do. Did the possession end with the type of shots we're looking for? So those are the two offensive phases: transition offense and offense. I would be looking for sort of like a reflection of the things that we've emphasized during our implementation of our system.
Mhm. You kind of mentioned this, but how do you foresee coaches using this to actually make their players better and improve their basketball IQ?
Well, I've shared this with the coaches in the ramp group that I created, and uh, so some good ideas are already bubbling up about being able to say do after we've got enough sample size and data accumulated, to say, okay, when we achieve 4 or 5 out of 5, something like that, of these things, and whatever they may be for your big headings, but say for mine, like, when we get the ball ahead over the half court line, we get the ball right out of the net and back in bounds, we get the outlet. We could then say, okay, on the possessions that we got 4 out of 5, 5 out of 5, what we'll call like good or exemplary, right? what did our points per possession look like, and be able to say, okay, then, if and this would be a total prediction, but if our points per possession were better on the possessions in which we kind of hit more of these qualities, then that sort of like reinforces the importance of them to our team, our players, our staff. So I see that as one way to use it. And like I already mentioned, just sort of like beforehand, a to-do list, afterwards, almost like an inspection, if you will. Like, did this happen? Did this happen? This happened? Yeah.
I foresee coaches that are especially into the analytics or just numbers people, like turning this almost into like a spreadsheet and like how many times did we give up these things?
Yeah.
I think the way that it is right now just gives you a very organized, did we do this? Did we not do this? And maybe if you're at a higher level or you have more time on your hands, you could even sit and start tracking these, like how many times did we do this? And that allows you to do what you just said there, where you can say, well, we did this 7 times and, over the course of 15 games or 20 games, when we do this 8 times, we win 80% of our games or whatever.
And I think too that, like, say these 20 points, these 20 sort of teaching points that we've decided make the cut for this exercise, right? I think that one thing that I heard this week that I really liked was Tom Crean was on a podcast, Slapping Glass, that he said, like, repeat your best stuff often. Repeat those things. So like these 20 points, as throughout the season and all those practices and all of the unpacking we do of the games we played last night, or, like in of like, hey, here's a possession where we got the ball out of the right guy got the ball out right out of the net and back in bounds above the free throw line extended, like, and look at this possession. So like you've kind of got 20 teaching points that are going to be repeated and repeated over and over again, to where what we really want is to brand our team with qualities reflected in these 20 teaching points. And by using them and referring back to them, like, hey, see, like, you've got the defense up there in transition defense. We didn't pick up the ball till way too deep, and now the ball's coming downhill at us 1,000 miles an hour, and we gave up a coast-to-coast layup. Mm-hmm. Like, so we're repeating these things over and over and over until they sort of become internalized by our team. So we could touch on the transition teaching points again. I would fully give the disclaimer that this is just my exercise. So if you emphasize something different, or you see something on there that you don't agree with, take it off and put your own bullet point in there. If you see something on there that you don't understand what that even means, ask me on Twitter. I'll help you out, or whatever, replace one of my bullet points with something you think's more important. Do it. But just steal the idea, transition defense, things that I can clearly see on film. And it's yes or no. It's very binary. It's very black or white. We engage the ball at or above our pickup point, whatever that may be for you and your defense, whether that's volleyball line, half court line, north of the half court line, whatever that may be for you and what you're going for. We can watch a film and check that box, like that happened or it didn't. The guy we want picked up the ball at or above the half court line. Mm-hmm. If that's your pickup point. I'll just left pickup point in there, because that could be whatever for whomever, right? Mm-hmm. Did someone get back and protect the rim? Yes or no? That's simple. Yes, we either did or we didn't. Did our fullback get all the way back and protect? And we've got somebody there to protect the rim. I'm looking on film. Nobody's there. Don't check the box. And then we could say, look, hey, on these 5 possessions last night, we didn't pick up the ball at the pickup point, or we didn't have someone protecting the rim, and our opponent scored 12 points. Mm-hmm. Like that sort of thing is what I'm going for. Mm-hmm. Another, I tried to make them a lot of them very visual, like you can see this happen or not. Like the player dribbling the ball was the last player over the half court line. That's what I liked when I taught transition defense. I wanted whomever was responsible for picking up the ball to pick it up at the pickup point or north of there to slow down the advance of the ball. And what I like to watch on film was, did the guy bouncing the ball, was he the last player of the 10 players on the court across the half court line? Now we've got our defense sit. Now we've got all 5 bodies behind the ball. Like those kind of things that I can see clearly on film are what made it on this list, and I can just check that box.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it serves as an incredible template for maybe helping coaches put together their pillars or their core values for each of those 4 phases. And then I see it very practically being something that I'm now able to communicate to both my staff and my players. This is the stuff that is the most important thing for us within these 4 phases.
Yeah.
And then that would allow me to create drills and schedule practice
There you go.
sessions that reflect these 3 to 5 things. I'd encourage coaches to maybe even somehow, get it down to like 3. I think 3s are even easier to remember. And, maybe if you're working with younger players, keeping it simpler like that. But then giving that, I see this being a tool for coaches to be able to use with their assistants. Like, here, this is how to watch film and to what actually to look for. Don't just give me a bunch of scattered information, because that's what goes back. I think it goes back and creates some biases then. Like, well, I saw this 3 times. This is why we lost. Like, was it really?
Yeah.
If these 3 to 5 things under each thing are things that actually, and that comes from, I think, the coach's expertise and experience of having watched a lot of games and knowing about his systems and all the things that we talked about last week. But, then I'm able to communicate to my assistants. And then now the both of us as a staff are able to communicate to our players the things that actually matter. And then they're able to understand. You could give a very simple checklist like this. I would stay away probably from the Excel sheet with all the columns and numbers. Giving to older players, you could do that, but maybe to younger players, just giving them a checklist and having all of us watch film together. I have no idea sometimes what my players are thinking about or even watching when we watch film together. But using this as a tool where like all of us can sit there and do it and then talk about it afterwards. What did you see? What are some things that stood out to you? And teaching younger players how to watch film. And then, okay, now we're going to go out on the court and practice these things. And we're practicing these things because you told me in the classroom that we were bad at these 3 things, or we need to improve these 3 things. So I see something this simple improving every aspect of your program to make you better, both with your basketball IQ and then also like what it looks like, how you play out on the court.
Yeah, my hope is if there's a coach who's looking at each of these 20 checkpoints, and if maybe you see something I have mentioned when I did this exercise that I hadn't really done a good job teaching that, or I haven't really, I want that, but I don't know that I've sort of like driven it home. Like maybe there's something on there that like you can take away that will I don't know, like fill that void. Last phase of the 4 phases we hadn't talked about would be defense. Again, I'll repeat it because I want it driven home. Would be, this is just me, one man who did this exercise. If there's something on here, like I have prevent ball reversal because I like on the line, up the line, pressure denial type defense. So we want to get the ball on the side, keep it on the side, that sort of thing. If that's not your bag, and take it off, and what would be on yours? Put your 5 defensive pillars on there, like, so, again, I tried to make things visual, but preventing ball reversal, I can watch film and go, hey, this team just popped it right around the horn. Like it was pop, 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 nothing to it. Like, that's not cool. Like, that's not what we do here, and when they reverse it like that, we got caught in a closeout situation and gave up a layup or something, like, so that's why we prevent ball reversal, those sorts of things I can drive home. Did we get a touch? That's very visual, meaning that what I call get a touch is get a deflection. Did the defense touch the basketball? That's what we're going for, is getting a touch. That's very visual, very black and white. We either did touch it or didn't. The possession ending, the last 2 bullet points would be how we want our opponent's possessions to end. Did it end with a steal or a turnover? If it didn't end with a steal or turnover, did it end with the type of shot that we can live with? Making them dribble to a shot was the example I used. So yeah, so just customize the bullet points to fit the high level objectives of whatever teaching points that you use for your 4 phases.
Mhm. And you said even having introduced this to your ramp guys within the last week or two, like
Hmm.
a lot of feedback, and I have a feeling it'll be something that coaches look at and do have thoughts. Whether that's customizing for their own thing or like maybe some ways that you can visualize it. I think how people think about the game. I'm always interested to see like the tools that they create that go along with that, or something this simple like kind of grows into.
Yeah,
You talked about this being something that you talked about with your ramp guys, and this was actually something that you sent out to them this week. Um,
yeah,
where was that? And then also, how can somebody find something like this
yeah.
uh, through you?
Well, they could get in my ramp program, or I also send it out to my Radius Athletics Extra newsletter subscribers. Um, Full disclosure, I did put it behind the paywall, so if you're one of the free subscribers, you'll be unable to view it. But maybe you're watching this and can do it on your own. That's fine, But yeah, that'd be the two ways. Another point I'd like to make, Tony, that just sort of like dawned on me about this exercise would be, I think sometimes when we're watching film of like say a game that we played last night, and we're watching film that night or the day after, and I think I know I speak to a lot of coaches who, I guess the they're watching how their players played. They're looking for, what did Tony do well? What did Randy do well? What did this player do well or not well? And I think sometimes they miss, how did we play? How did like almost think of the 5 players on the court as like human basketball playing units. Not like, I'm not trying to, like, how did we play? I'm zooming out. Did we get width in transition? Did we, like, and then start to zoom in on who did or didn't, and those sorts of things. And I think this checklist sort of like maybe like would get a coach from thinking less about like, like this player's pivot feet are all wrong, and more about like, hey, the big things I'm teaching to my team, the program level 20 bullet points are not or are happening, and then I'm free to zoom in tighter if I feel like the big things are being absorbed. If
Mhm.
they're not, then I got to revisit that, you know. So that's another thing I think that this exercise should get you to do, is think evaluatively about, how are we playing, and how is the unit doing the big things that we want.
Mhm. Yeah, that's a good point. And once you get that, then you can, to your point, zero in on the things that matter. One of those things that people can zero in on, I'm excited about mentioning this. We've
Yeah.
got coming up August 9th at what we decide, 7:30 Eastern time,
Yes.
8:30 Central time. Randy's
Other way,
gonna
other way around.
is the other way around. Sorry.
Yeah, 7:30 Central, 8:30 Eastern, I think.
Right.
Yeah.
We're doing a pressure man-to-man defense masterclass. Uh, Randy's doing it. I'm moderating it, but we'll have more information about that. We'll be sure to post that down in the description below, as well as put that on our social media channels. We'll run probably about an hour and a half. We'll have a hour-long ish presentation Randy will give us, and then after that, we'll have some Q&A, and that can be related to the defensive portion of it, or even non-related. So,
Yeah.
opportunity for us as coaches to get better here in the off season. I know it's a ways away still, but we'll probably be surprised at how quickly the season comes. And I know a lot of coaches are thinking about what they're going to do this coming year. So this would be a great piece of information that they could get to maybe implement some of these things into their program this season.
Yeah. Yeah, and pressure man to man, something that I've tweeted a lot about, written a lot about, but I haven't really done a clinic on it in some time. And some things that, like, I've sort of changed my view on or modified or learned more about that I think it's time to do a refresher, a revisit. So that's what we're doing August 9th.
Yep. Again, Tuesday, August 9th, 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time, 7:30 Central Time, and we'll be sure to post that on our social media channels and again down in the description below. Thanks to all of you who joined us this week. If you missed any part of the live show, you can go back and watch or listen to any part. Visit Radius Athletics on YouTube to see the full interview, or you can go to any podcast platform and search Hoops Forum, and there you'll find the audio version of the show. For Randy Sherman, I'm Tony Miller. We'll talk to you again next time on Hoops Forum.